Hi and welcome to episode 6 of Clickteam Fusion for beginners, and this is going to be the first episode that we try and create a project over several episodes and probably more than that. What we're looking at doing is having a very distinctive part of the game that we're going to create in every episode. Today's project is going to be the puzzle game element. There's lots and lots of games that build on this type of puzzle. Candy Crush Saga, for instance, is one of them. You have a grid of things and you click on the things, and the thing you click on removes and the others slide down, and if you have lots of connected ones, then you get more points, and it's just a game like that. Now, how far we're going to get into that, I don't know. I've set a time limit, but we'll see how we do. So the new things we're looking at is very conditional logic. We're going to be creating an array to hold all the data from all the objects in our grid, and then we're going to compare them, see if they're the same colour or different colours, and it's going to get very, very complicated very, very quickly. We're also going to have a look at custom movement. I'm a fan of, if I can, to create the code to move things myself by changing their X or Y coordinates, rather than using the movement built into Clickteam. Movement built into Clickteam is amazing, especially for when you have collisions. But if collisions aren't a part of the movement, which they won't be in this, then it's sometimes easier just to code it yourself and more precise. And you generally have much more control over it. So let's have a look at the project that we're doing today. So first thing we need to do is create a grid of objects, which we know how to do. I did say to someone that I would say this. We are going to be using loops, but because we're doing a loop for the X and then a loop for the Y, they're called nested loops because it's a loop within a loop. So if you are using another programming language, you would know them as nested loops. I've got that bit over with, which is good. We have to create the movement when an object is touched. So when the object is touched, we've got to create the movement for all the other objects to take its place. And we're going to be doing a little bit of a weird way of doing that, which will make sense. We've also got to randomize the movements as well. Randomize the objects as well, so you're not always playing the same game. Then we need to add the conditional logic to see how many objects to destroy. So if you've clicked on a red one and there's a red one next to it and a red one above it, then they all get destroyed. That's generally how these games go. And we need a way of keeping the score. So this is a really difficult project, but what I'm going to try and do is do a bit at a time, and if I need to spend some time in the next episode to do some of this, then that's not a problem. So we're going to try and do this as simply as possible, which is not going to be too easy. Okay, let's begin. So start by opening Clickteam Fusion, and there we are. Always the start of all the videos. Okay, so I'm going to click on File and New to start a new project. This time, like I did in the last one, I'm going to save it straight away, so I don't know where this saves. Let's save this on the desktop, and this is going to be episode 6. So episode 6, and we can come up with more inspiring names maybe later on, but for now saved as episode 6. So I click on this frame to open it up. Now we're going to keep the default dimensions. As a lot of you have noticed, I've put all the games that I can put up onto the website. So I'm going to change this to Flash because I'm hosting all of them as Flash for now. I might use HTML5 if I can get my website to be really happy with HTML5, which I can't at the moment. So the reason why I've done that now rather than at the end is there might be a few objects I use that aren't available in Flash, and I need to make sure they're available in Flash so that you can play this on the site. You notice if you click this and you double click anywhere, the amount of objects that you can use severely gets reduced. It's because there's a lot of objects which are purely for Windows EXE, and that's generally where Clickteam focuses on, is being able to create games for Windows. However, there are still quite a few objects you can use, and actually there's some that are purely just for the exporters that you're using. So Flash has a few on its own, HTML5 has a few on its own. iOS and Android especially have quite a few new tools that allow you to integrate into the OS that you're using. Right. Anyway, let's move on. So we're going to start off by double clicking and creating an active, and I'm just going to plot it down there. Right, so I need to work out how big I'm going to make these. Now I'm not going to touch on making games responsive in any episodes anytime soon, because it gets quite complicated to do. So I'm just going to keep this at the width and heights that it is, which is 640 by 480. So my biggest issue is obviously going to be the height, and I want it to be thinner than the full, because I need some space here for the score. So what would be a sensible size? Now if I did 48 by 48, it allows me to have 10 all the way down here, but there's no space for padding or anything at the top and bottom. I'm not going to leave spaces between the objects for this one, because I'm going to create the object in the middle of the square here. So let's have a think. If I make this 48 by 48, let's give that a go. So let's make it 48 by 48. Ooh, not 484, 48. Okay, and that looks big enough to be able to easily click, and you want to make sure that a user can easily click on it. And I'm going to double click on this, and I'm going to remove what's in there by highlighting it all and pressing delete. You could also press Ctrl and A and delete, and that'll do the same thing. I want to increase the amount of directions, because I'm going to use each direction is going to be a different object, and I might want to use all 32 of these, because the last one's 31 but it starts at 0, so it's 32 directions, so I might want 32 different objects later on. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to have the first one just a red dot. So I want to, don't want that, Control and Z to undo. I want it to fill up with a red dot. And I probably should do this, try and make sure that it's in the middle of the frame. If you ever don't have it in the middle of the frame, you can select it and just shift it up or shift it down. Looks about right. And I'm not going for absolute perfection in these. I'm going to pick a slightly darker one to try and get some shading on it. Somewhat shading. And I'm not a graphics person, but I'm pretty sure that looks a bit prettier. And let's do a little bit darker for the top left bit of it. It's not ideal, but it'll do. Okay, and I might make it a little bit lighter at the bottom left. Try and give the illusion that it's three-dimensional. And I went a bit over there, so I'll remove that. And you can click on this one to remove things. This just paints nothing. And it looks like I went a bit crazy at the bottom there. There we go. So if I click OK, now that's naturally in the center, so that will give the padding between it and the next one along, and it will also enable the user to be able to touch this area here, and it still knows what they're touching. Okay, I need a few more, so I'm going to increase this, and I'm going to put another one in here. No idea what I'm going to draw. Draw a banana-like thing. Why not? And it doesn't matter what shapes you choose. They probably should have a theme. And this is not a tutorial on my lack of artistic talent, so we're going to get this done as quickly as we can. There we go. And I don't know, a square. Let's go for a safe square. And again, Control and Z because I didn't fill it in. Probably not a perfect square. Could have held down. Let's try and do that a perfect square. So if you hold down Shift, it makes sure that it's in the same dimensions. Okay, so I'm going to do some shading on that. I don't know what the shading would be, like diagonal across, I suppose. And if you don't have a graphics artist or anything behind the scenes, then doing all this can be quite laborious. I'm going to stick at 3 for now, and I can see there's a little bit there which I need to remove. There we are. Okay, so let's set up the frame. So I've clicked on the event editor, and I want to insert a group of events. I'm going to call this init, and I'm going to have it active when frame starts. And what this will do is this will fire as soon as we start our frame. Now this is really useful if we need to reset. So I'm going to say always, because I'm going to close the init group down at the end. And this is sort of like a function I've created, and we've talked about that in previous episodes. So what a group is it will just run everything in here, and if you put the last event as close the init group, it means you can fire it in a similar way to doing a loop. So I'm going to start off by firing our loop. So tile X. So how many across? So let's say 10 for now. And I didn't copy the loop, so let's copy that, which is Control and Z, and on loop, tile X. I'm going to drag this down because it's only subtly going to change. It's going to be tile Y, and again I'm just going to copy that, and I think it was 10 down, so actually I probably don't want 10 across, and I'll just paste that in. I'd probably be happy with sort of 6 across. We'll see how that looks like. So I'm going to create the object, which I've called active for now, which I'm going to change the name of. Put them all at 0, 0, but what I'm going to do is reposition them, and this is all stuff we've done before, so I'm not necessarily going to go through it. You can see previous episodes of exactly what I'm doing here, and we want the x coordinate to follow the x, and we're going to times it by, what was it, 48 I think. I'm going to copy that because I'm going to use the same for the y. So position y coordinate, paste it in, this time the y loop. Let's run that, and ooh, here we go, so something happened. I'll tell you what happened, I didn't close the loop. So group of events, deactivate init. I think it overloaded there. There we go. Alright, you can see they're in the wrong places, so let's go back and fix that. And I'm going to do this every single time, and I want to move the hotspot into the top left because that's where my conditional logic is based. And I'm going to remove this one, and I'm going to say nope, let's not create that at the start. Run it again, and there we go. Actually that's pretty good. Alright, now what I want to do is also have an array that keeps track of all these things. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to type in array, which is this one here, and I'm going to set up the array. So the x dimension we know is 10, the y dimension I think was 6, so y dimension 6. Now there's probably quite a lot of stuff that I want to store in this. Don't worry too much about changing these numbers, because actually if you store extra stuff in the array it just adapts. These are just, I don't know why these are there, maybe for performance, I have no idea, because you can add more than 10 in the x dimension anyway. Okay, so the z dimension, let's put a 10. I don't want it to be a text array, I want it to store just numbers, there's no text I need to. And I normally try and maintain base 0, so I'm going to get rid of that so that it's a base 0, which is the same as the fast loops work in. Okay, so that's all looking good, and what I want to do is I want to store something in each of the members of the array. I want to choose a direction for these, but I need somewhere to store the direction so that both the object can point in that direction and the array can store what direction each object is. So I want to go back to my frame editor, and this is a tip I don't think I've gone through in previous videos. Alright, so let's come out of there so I can explain it. Alright, so in Clickteam you're going to store variables, and I've said to you that don't hard code any numbers. It's always best to store all the numbers you need. So say the loops, I wanted 6 across and 10 down. It's actually bad practice to say 6 across and 10 down. What would be better, is if I store 10 and 6 somewhere and then refer to 10 and 6 through that variable throughout all my code. Therefore, if someone comes to me and says, oh, you shouldn't have 6 across, or if I think, oh god, no, 6 across isn't enough, I can just change it in one place and it will permeate through the rest of the code, and it will enable me to make it, instead of 6 wide, 7 wide, without having to change anything in my code, just change one number. It could be that later levels it's wider, so that's just one change that I need to make then. So what I'm going to do, but what the problem is that you only have 26 global variables, and they are like gold dust, because global variables work between frames. They're especially useful if you use sub-applications, which we haven't gone on to. But they are like gold dust. You have 26 and that's it. There's no way of getting more global variables. So what we do is we double click and create an active, any active, and it's normal convention just to paint around the sides of it so that it stands out, and we call it our store or data store or whatever you want to call it. And we use the alterable values in this data store to store all our variables. And here we've got 26. If I run out, I can just create another active and use that. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to say temp random or temp rand, and I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to say directions. Now, so far we've only got 3 directions, so I'm going to put in 3, and the temp rand will calculate in the code. So, first thing we want to do on this is create a random. So if I drag this down to create a new one and drag it up, we want to create the random number first. So I right click on this and I say alterable value, set the alterable value, temp rand, and we want to create a random number, so there's a random direction. Right click on the special, generate random number. So what this function does is it will generate a random number from 0 and the amount of numbers you write. So if I do random 1, it's only going to come up with 0. It's only going to come up with 0. If I do random 2, then the 2 possible numbers it will come up with is 0 or 1. It does not include this because it's at base 0. So it counts 0 and then it does two numbers in total, 0 and 1. So what some people think is random 10 will be 1 to 10 or 0 to 10, but actually it's 0 to 9. If you want 1 to 10, just add 1 afterwards, and that will be 1 to 10. Now here we want 0, 1 and 2. So we want random 3 here because there's 3 directions we currently have. But if I do random 3 and I add another object, then I'm going to have to come and change this bit of code. So what I'm going to do is say random, and I'm going to do the number of directions, and that will automatically be random 3. And if I add another object and change that directions value to 4, then it will be random 4. Click OK. So each loop, that's going to generate a random number, and I just want to have this point in the direction of the random number. Click on the calculate button because I don't want to pick it, because if I pick this one, say, there will all be that banana. There we go. And it needs to be a number between 0 and 32, as we said. There are 32, or there's 32 directions. 32 actually is the same as 0, because the maximum direction is 0 to 31, with 32 being 0. So back to the beginning. Okay, so I want to get that alterable value of temp rand. Okay, I want to get that. And make a direction, and I want to store that in my array. Now I'm going to write it, and we're using the X, Y and Z, so I'm going to click this one. If we were just using the X and Y, I'd click this one. If we were just having a single dimension array, so we're just having a string of numbers, then we'll choose this one. So this one here, and the value to right is just the temporary direction. So values temp round. The X index will be the fast loop index of tile X, and make sure you copy it the same, because Clickteam won't tell you if you've had a lowercase x and it was an uppercase X here. It just won't work. I'm going to copy that, and our Y index is going to be the same but with the Y in. There we go. And the Z index, I'm going to store all the directions in 0 to make it a bit easier. So if I run this now, here we are, got a whole load of random fruit or whatever they're supposed to be. Okay, and there we go. Fantastic. And the important thing is also we've got that array with them in, so that's perfect. Okay, next thing what I want to do, so we've got the array storing it. I want to do the movement next, so I want to be able to click. So if I try that again, I want to be able to click on one and move these down. Now, one of the issues with this type of game is a lot of people, well, me initially, thought that you would need to create a very, very large array of values that's way higher than your game. Then when you click one, they sort of all slide down. The problem with this is creating all these extra elements above is going to be very, very demanding on your application. So if you're having it on a phone, for instance, it's going to have to store an awful lot of data. The way we do this is actually quite a weird way, and it's the way that we're going to do it now is the way that Apple do scrolling lists. We're only going to have a certain amount of objects at a time. All we're going to be doing is updating their directions. Now, it's a bit of a weird thing and a difficult thing to explain, but say we've got 5 objects on the screen, or 10 objects, so we'll just take one row, so we'll make it the same as this. So 10 objects. What we're going to do is have 11 objects. We're going to have an extra one up here. And when a user clicks on one of these objects, then all the ones above, including the 11th, will slide down. But they'll only slide down, but then they'll reset back to the way they were. And all that's going to happen is just the directions, the actual things displaying, are going to change. So if we have 11 high, it means we're always going to have the same amount on screen. We're just going to have one removed for a second and then just updated. So it's a bit of a weird thing to get your head around, but it has massive performance benefits. Instead of having to destroy and create, we're just using the same elements. Okay, and so this is going to be a tricky thing to do. So we do need to create another element on screen. So instead of doing it 10 times, we're actually going to do it 11 times to create the one on top. So we're going to do it 11 times. And the X position, so edit X position, we're going to shift it up 48. And remember, 0 is at the top and the Y goes, oh, that's the X, let's cancel that. So we want the Y, my bad. So we want the Y and we want it to move up, and up weirdly is minus, so we take away 48. So let's have a look at that, and it looks the same, but we do have extra objects up at the top. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to create an event where I click on one and it destroys it. So mouse, user clicks on an object, that object there we go. Oh, and let's just click destroy for now. There we are. That's not very good. Bit boring. It's just me clicking shapes. It is a little bit fun. Alright. And what we haven't done is, if I click there, it doesn't click the object, so we're going to have to sort that out later on. So let's reset that. So I want it, so if I click on that, the others slide down, and this extra one we've got on top here slides down as well. So we need to have, when user clicks, all objects that have the same row as it, the same column as it, so this is column 0, that have a lower y component will shift down. Okay, this is not going to be easy, so I want to probably start a loop to work out what's going to happen. So fast loop, destroy tile, call it a destroy tile loop, and we're just going to have it once, and we'll create another loop within it. Okay, so what we need to do is work out what value there is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here and click X, clicked tile X. I'm going to create two variables to store what position or what the X and Y of the tile is, which we haven't actually set, so we need to do that first. So I'm just going to nick the loop index thingy bob, and like we've done before, I want to store the X and the Y, and I'm going to just put them into X and Y, it's a bit easier, of each of the tiles. Ooh. So each of the tiles we created knows where it is, otherwise they would be all the same. And before I start that loop, I'm going to store set click tile X. I'm going to store what position that's in, which is the X. I'm just going to copy that because I need to do the same with the Y. Triple value set. Okay, double click this and move the loop afterwards, otherwise the loop will happen before these are set. So what the problem is, when you click on something, it knows what you're talking about, but if you create a loop, it will forget that it's this object that you're talking about. So we're going to store the data from the object first, and then we're going to go into the loop, and we can just refer to click tile X and click tile Y. So we want to destroy any object, and for now we're going to just destroy any object that has a X the same and a Y that's less. So we're going to insert alterable value for the object. We're going to say if the X is equal to the clicked X, and I'm just going to click and drag this into the 9 to copy it, and the Y is lower or equal, we'll say lower than the Y, then we're going to destroy it. Okay, so what we've done is we've said that when you click on something, we're going to destroy every element above it. Now we don't actually want that to happen, we're just testing the code, so let's have a look. So application, and let's click on this one. It should destroy these 4, and it does. Now I've just had a thought that actually I can do this a slightly different way. Instead of creating an extra element on top, I'm going to undo some of that, and this is proof that this is all done live. So I'm going to remove the fact that we're going to have an extra item on top. I'm going to change my mind over that. And the way I want to do, so if I click run and frame, the way I want to do this is we've got our objects here, and what I want to do is when you click on an object, I want to shift all of them up instantaneously and then get them all to move down. So we're only going to ever have 10 on the screen. It's not going to be easy to do, but I can use my array to help me figure out what should be where. So let's try our best to do that, and this, as I said, is going to be not the easiest task. So when I click on this one, I need this one to be removed, But secretly what's going on is this one is shifting up to this one here is shifting up to this one's shifting up to this one, until there's an extra row on top here, and then they're all going to just permeate down. So what I need is, instead of to destroy them, I need them all to shift up, but not just those ones. I need the one I click on also to shift up, so lower or equal to it. And I need these ones to shift up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set an alterable value, which I don't think we've used A yet, and I'm going to set that as 48. And I'm going to set a always condition that the Y position, so position, the Y position is the alterable value Y times 48, which is what we initially set. So this one, in fact, let's just click OK and let's start it now. This one shouldn't change anything. Yep, they're all in exactly the same position, because I'm just basically saying whatever I'm saying here, but always. But I want it to take away the alterable value of A, which again, the alterable value, all alterable values start at 0, so nothing's actually changed here. But if I click on one, all of these then get an extra 48 added to their alterable value A. So they're adding to 48. And what I want to say is every, let's think of 10th of a second. So every 10th of a second, I'm going to include another one. So insert, if the alterable value A is greater than 0, and I just want to subtract 1 from alterable value A. And I might need to change these numbers. It might need to be more rapidly, and I might need to take away more. So let's click run and frame. And as you see, it's very, very slow. Very slow. Okay, so instead of subtracting 1, I might need to subtract more. But if you think about it, 5 is not going to work because 48 isn't a multiple of 5. So what I want to say is, if the alterable value is lower than 0, I want to set it, oh, can't copy that, I want to set the alterable value to 0, so it's always going to be 0 or more. So let's frame, and that's looking better. It's still a bit juddery, so if it's juddery, it means that it probably needs to be less time so that you can't notice the movement as much. And you can see here that's actually quite a good speed. Probably wants a little bit more. Whoops. I want to subtract. Let's try 8. I want it a little bit quicker. And that's good. Okay, so it looks a bit weird if I have a look at it. What's happening, unfortunately, at the moment, which we knew would happen, is the same objects are just sliding up and down, and that doesn't look very good. It doesn't make the game, in fact, it makes the game identical. However much we play it, nothing's changing in this. They're exactly the same objects all the way around. So what I wanted to do is update the objects at this point. Okay, so we have a problem here. If we have a look at the game, application, and they just fall down, but they're not being updated. The best way of doing this is update the array first. So if we update the array, what we can do is have it so that the objects always take their directions from the array. So we're going to do that first. We're going to get the directions of the objects always fed from the array, and we're going to test that, and then we're going to try and change the array. And the array is not going to be easy to change because they're based on other parts of the array. So if we update this part, then this part will be affected. So we've got to sort of work backwards through the array, which is not going to be easy. So let's give it a go. So First of all, we want the direction to be fed from the array. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deliberately remove this. So if I run it now, they'll all be the same object. And what I want to do is I want to feed the direction from the array. So we're going to have a new loop. So I can just click and drag this one. And it's going to be direction from array. Not very original with my names. Let's copy that. And in this, I'm going to loop through all of the objects. So what am I doing? I want to create a fast loop, and I want to loop through all the objects. If I can screw my head on, and we're going to have same as always, an X. Ooh. So what I'm doing? Don't know what I'm doing. Okay, we're going to have an X and a Y component. So the X is going to be 6 times. And the Y is going to be 10 times. I'm just copying these as I go. So we're going to loop through the array. And all I want is the direction of this to be fed from the array. So I'm just going to look into the array, and I'm going to pick the X and the Y. Ooh. Not doing very well with the clicks, and it's going to be Z0. Okay, so if I then run this after the initial setup, so I want to run this, so fast loop, and I just need to do it once because then this will fire 6 and then 10 and nothing. Okay, so let's have a think about why that's not working. So we've written value on that, that's fine. Direction from array, that's all fine. And select direction from array X, direction from array Y. And we haven't really said which object it is, so we need to insert and say, well, actually I want the one that shares the X. And this is why we test, because you do stuff like this. So you need to specify what object that we want to do, and we want the one with the alterable value X and the alterable value Y that is the same as the one being looked at in the loop. Let's try it again now, and it works perfectly. Okay, so therefore whenever I change the array, I can just fire this direction from array, and that will then update all the directions they should be, and it allows me to only have to worry about the array. All the objects, as long as the array is right, all the objects will be right. So what I need to do now is I'm going to move this destroy tile. So what we're going to do is we're going to sort out the array here. Now there are problems with this, so this is the second challenge. I'm going to start a loop, and I'm going to say update array. And let's copy that. Now I only need to do it 10 times because it will only affect one column at a time, so I don't need to loop through all the Y, all the X components. It's just the Y's I need to look at. And let's click and drag one of these loops down here somewhere. Double click and update array, and then we want to move this near where I've called it, so that it's all in logical order. Now this is going to be really tricky because what I need to do is work backwards through the array. Basically what's going to happen is there's a column of 10, and each object is going to look at the previous object to update its direction. So if I click somewhere here, this object will look at the one above. Now if I work going downwards, then each of them it's going to not work, because I'm going to change this one, but this one is looking at this one to update. So I need to work at the bottom upwards. So I need to start from the bottom of the array and work backwards. So this is where it gets tricky. So insert. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to compare two general values. I don't want, let's have a think. Right, so get loop index. So I'll need the loop index. But I don't want it to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I want it to work backwards from 10. Now the problem with doing 10 takeaway is that it's 0 based. So it should be 9 takeaway, shouldn't it? Because there's 10, but it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And this will work backwards through it, so it's going to start off with the last one. Now I want to say if that is, let's have a think about it, if that is lower or equal to the clicked one, so values, and the clicked RY. So this will only happen if it's lower than it. Now what I could do is I could change an alterable value. I can add to an alterable value, sorry, global value of 1 to see if it works. And if I look in here, now I've got array open, let's close that. And let's have a look at my global values. Now sometimes on Windows 10 this doesn't work straight away. I've had problems with this, so let's remove that. Yeah, I can't open the global values. There we are. Okay, so it's 6 at the moment, so it's reset. And I need to close it down actually. Open it up. Okay, so if I click here, it should fire off twice. And it does. It's number 2. If I click here, it should be 3, so that would make 5 in total. Yeah, it does. So I know it's starting to work. And all I need to do is update the array. So I'm going to write the value to x, y, z. Okay, this is going to be the tricky bit. What value do you write? Well, I'm going to write a value from x, y, and z. What's my x going to be? Well, the x is the easy bit because that's stored in here. So it's alterable value and it's just the x, because we're only working with one column. Now the y is going to be slightly harder. I need to do that 9 minus the loop index array. 9 minus fast loop index array. Okay. But I needed to get it to the previous one. So I need to minus 1 there. So I want it to be the previous one. Okay, let's copy this, because I'll need parts of it for the x. So this one here for the x, and this part here for the y, without the minus 1, and then 0 there. Let's see if this works. It'd be a miracle if it does, and it doesn't. It's still not updating the array. So let's have a think about why that's happening. It's happening because I'm not firing this this update, this one here. So I need to fire that at the end of doing that. So I want update array, and then I want to show it. And there we go. Now you'll notice that anytime a new tile is added, at the top, it's just always being 0. And that's because we're looping through and we're looking at the previous one, but there isn't a previous one at the top. So we need to create a way of doing that. So we're going to say, yes, this works fine, but if the loop index is 9 or 10, or no, 9, then we want to do something else. So if the loop index is equal, so it has to be greater than, or lower than 9 for that to happen. We're going to copy and paste this, and we're going to say, well, if it equals, and we say greater or equal, but really it's only going to ever equal 9. If it equals 9, then we want to do something else. And what we want to do is do the same random thing as we did here, and then we're going to feed that random number into there. So where are we? Going to get that random number into there. Temp rand. Okay, and the problem with this is it's going to do the random number after this, so we need to just move that up. And all I did there was double clicked it and said, right, find the random number and then do this. Let's try it now. And there we go. And the ones at the top are random, and they're all sliding down nicely as you would expect. Okay, so that's the end of this video. I knew we wouldn't have enough time. There's an awful lot of logic and stuff to do. So in the next video we're going to be looking at how to compare objects and how we're going to make this an actual game rather than just things moving down the screen. It's been quite a difficult battle to get this video out, but we got there in the end. Thank you for all the comments. I've had some great feedback and ideas for videos that people want me to do. I would say also thanks for checking out the website. All the games and stuff that I have been able to put on the website I have done. You can go back to previous videos and actually play the games, like the keyboard one I did last time. You can go online and have a look at those. So thank you very much, and if you like this video, click like. If you really like the video, click subscribe. Thank you very much.